Kane and Lynch is one of those franchises that feels like it's almost forgotten about at this point. I remember seeing trailers for it when I was young, and a lot of my friends at the time said something to the effect of, "Oh, that looks cool, I'll play it at some point." But then no one I know did. By the time I originally played through the game, it was much later, and it was maybe $10 at my local game store, and I picked it up almost at a whim. But what is Kane and Lynch? Kane and Lynch is a franchise that feels like it came and went. The original came out in 2007 and sold pretty well despite only getting okay reviews at the time. So, a few years later came the sequel, which is what we will be looking at today. Kane and Lynch 2 Dog Days is a third-person shooter that came out in 2010 on PS3, Xbox 360, and PC, and was developed by IO Interactive and published by Square Enix Europe. This is, of course, the sequel to Kane and Lynch Dead Men. Aside from it being a sequel to the fairly popular original, one of the main selling points of the game was its take on the main camera for the game itself being in a found footage style. At the time of release, the game had middling reviews, with most outlets giving it around a 6 out of 10. It's a game that had a lot of potential and hype, but most thought it didn't quite live up to it. I remember enjoying the game when I played it originally, but I wanted to take a deeper look at the gameplay, discuss the story, and see how it holds up today. For this playthrough, I played the PC port mostly for ease of access. So, I've gone back and played through the story mode of the game, played the arcade mode, and attempted to play the online multiplayer. So let's go back and take a deep dive into the world of Kane and Lynch 2, Dog Days.
Let him go! Hey! Lynch! I'll fucking kill you!
We start 4 years after the events of the first game, where Kane and Lynch have gone their separate ways. Lynch has started a new life in Shanghai with his girlfriend Shu, and is working for a crime organization led by English-born expat Glazer. When Glazer tells Lynch about a plan to smuggle guns to Africa, Lynch contacts Kane for help, and in return, he'd split the money with him. The money would not only help them retire, but also benefit Kane's estranged daughter, Jenny. One last job.
I'll take you to your hotel. I just gotta do this one thing. I need to talk to this guy in here and send him a message.
Huh?
Yeah, he's been talking too much.
After Kane arrives in Shanghai, Lynch brings him along to help on a simple job to threaten an informant named Lee Brady Lung. The plan pretty immediately goes badly, and a chase scene through an enemy gang's territory ensues. After shooting a number of gang members, the pair corner Brady and his girlfriend in a wet market. Another quick gunfight happens, and Brady's girlfriend is accidentally killed in the crossfire. Brady then takes his own life because of this, much to the dismay and shock of the two main characters.
What just happened? Did he just... The fuck just happened?
If it wasn't obvious before, I feel like it will be now. Kane and Lynch are not good humans. They're bad people who have the potential to do even worse things. If you didn't play the first game, both Kane and Lynch were on death row. It's not one of those situations where a good guy has been forced and coerced into doing bad things. They're both fundamentally flawed humans, and it shows. The other thing up front is this is a very dark game that deals with these firefights in a semi-realistic way. There are real-world consequences to getting into these fights, and the characters have to deal with these consequences. It also shows these consequences in a fairly unique way with the found footage style camera for the main character, as mentioned in the intro. When a headshot is landed on an enemy, there is no quip or fun jab like there would be in other third-person action games like Resident Evil 4 or Gears of War.
Sorry about the brains.
No. The enemies crumple and their body is blurred. Almost like the game knows we shouldn't be doing this. The camera is both Dog Days' biggest strength and biggest weakness, but more on that later. The next day, Kane and Lynch meet up with Glazer to talk about the smuggling operation mentioned earlier, but their limousine is ambushed by Brady's gang looking for some revenge.
Yeah, I'll take you out sometime. This town was built for people like us. Ain't that?
Then, you guessed it, another firefight ensues, this time through the highway and streets. So, run through this, shoot some guys, and learn more about the story. This is the main gameplay loop of Kane and Lynch 2. Get some exposition, then run and gun through a set level till you unlock the next cutscene. There isn't anything wrong with this per se, but it can get a bit repetitive. It's your typical third-person shooter affair. Hide behind walls, and when people pop out, shoot them until they stop shooting at you. Now, I have always preferred third-person shooters over first-person, however, they can fall into a bit of a trap at times of feeling like a shooting gallery that fires back. Dog Days is no exception to this, as many times that it's exactly what it feels like. However, unlike a lot of third-person shooters, Dog Days is naturally hard. Enemies will run up to you, surround you, and can kill you very quickly. I played through Dog Days on normal, and at times it didn't feel like it, but maybe that's a skill issue, so I digress. Back to Shanghai. The duo learn that the leader of their attackers is a crime lord named Singh. Kane, Lynch, and Glazer's mercenaries raid Singh's sweatshop headquarters and capture him. But of course, another fight breaks out. Right around here is where I started to notice the general lack of polish in Dog Days. There are a bunch of little things that the game does to make it feel almost rushed. Stuff like how when you grab a new gun or pick up the ammo, the character doesn't always actually bend over and grab the gun or ammo. It just at times appears within one of your two gun slots. I understand that this example might add to the arcade feel, but that feels like it almost goes against the rest of the tone the game is trying to set up, with the camera and the general approach to combat aside from this. There are other things as well, like how anytime the player goes through a door or does an action that requires both Kane and Lynch, Kane will just teleport to wherever you are and do said action. I'm sure that if it actually required the NPC to be there, that would be frustrating, but there had to be some sort of middle ground between the two. Dog Days is full of these types of things that individually aren't a huge deal, but when added up, it's an active detractor. Anyways, we get to Singh eventually, and after interrogating him, it's revealed that the girl that died earlier in the game with Brady was the daughter of a really high-ranking Politburo official named Shang-Chi.
You think you big man, oh big man, eh? Shooting girl.
What are you talking about?
You stupid man. You shoot wrong girl.
What girl?
Girl in market. Shang-Chi's daughter.
No, that couldn't be.
Shang-Chi is not happy. He will kill every one of you.
And they are told that anyone that is with Kane and Lynch is essentially open season. After hearing this, Glazer's men turn on Kane and Lynch, and the duo was forced to take out their former allies in order to hide this new information from Glazer. They eventually do so and escape the police and Singh's gang. Which means it's time to move on to the next location, and we are greeted with a load screen. Now, to be clear, there are a lot of load screens in this game. In fact, they're in between every chapter. What I like about this is during these load screens is where we get some of the best character building within Kane and Lynch 2.
Hello? Hey, hon. You back home? Okay. No, I'm still waiting for Kane. Yeah, it'll be good to see him again. It's been a long time. Look, I'll call you later. We'll eat all three. Yeah, you too, babe. Bye. Oh, soup. Shit.
You have to remember that this game was released back on the PS3 and 360 days, so load screens were a lot more prevalent back then than they are today. I like that Dog Days uses this as an opportunity to world build, and it makes the semi-short loading times go by even quicker. It's a nice touch that I didn't want to go unnoticed. When we are done loading, we are trying to lay low in a restaurant and figure out what to do. While there, Lynch tries to call his girlfriend to meet up with him somewhere, and she doesn't answer. Suddenly, a SWAT team shows and starts to open fire on the duo. So of course, Kane and Lynch have to take them all out. With the introduction of the SWAT enemies comes what I believe to be another problem overall with Kane and Lynch, and that's the lack of variety. I've mentioned a few times that the basic gameplay loop is same throughout. Hear exposition, watch a cutscene, then get into gunfights. The problem with this though is that all of the enemies are exactly the same. Sure, some of them carry different guns, but in reality, every single fight plays out the same, and there is no real strategy to it. I don't need this to be a tactics game, but when every single encounter, barring one, if I'm being generous, feels the same, that's when it's a problem. Bad guys come, you shoot them, you move on. On top of this, the gunplay is also inconsistent. This is mostly due to the weapon spread when firing. None of the guns in the game, even when aiming, will always 100% go to where you aim them. This makes some weapons almost useless, like the machine pistols. On top of that, since the way the developers decide to differentiate enemies is by giving them different weapons, there are just a ton of weapons all around that make some of the others useless. Why would I ever choose to use a pistol when I can grab a shotgun that will theoretically kill most enemies in one shot? Beyond that, there's only really a couple things you can do. You can take an NPC as hostage, though this is mostly useless as enemies will ignore the fact that you have one and kill you both regardless. Or your AI partner will kill the person you're holding, which defeats the purpose of you grabbing one and taking them anyways. There are also explosives which can be found scattered throughout the levels, fire extinguishers, propane tanks, and you can pick these up and throw them at the enemies, and then of course set them off by shooting them. You don't actually have to aim at them though, really. The game will auto do this if you click the fire button, which sort of makes them feel like timed grenades rather than what they are. As an aside, it's surprising that Dog Days doesn't have any traditional grenades in this game. Feels like an obvious missed opportunity. Anyways, with the attack of the SWAT officers now over, the duo rush over to Sue's apartment only to find that it's been taken over by Singh's men. We attempt to fight through everyone that's there while also protecting Sue, but eventually they get her at gunpoint. Kane suggests to kill him right then and there, but Lynch is worried about what may happen to Sue if that happens, so he knocks out his partner and surrenders, hoping that would be enough to convince them not to kill her.
I got him in my sight. One shot.
Hey, don't do this, Kane!
Tell him to let her go. Trust me.
Kane, I'm sorry!
What comes next is probably one of the hardest moments to see in the game. All of Kane, Lynch, and Sue are being horrendously tortured by Singh. We wake up in a dumpster, naked and completely torn up. This is the scene that was teased during the intro of the game. We go up and find that Kane is still currently being tortured and save him. Unfortunately, it was too late for Sue. She dies because of the consequences of his actions earlier in the game.
Don't look.
This scene is beyond heartbreaking, and one of the few times that you can actually justifiably root for this duo. I mentioned earlier that they are horrible people, but at this point, I feel like it crosses the line into them being our horrible people. The voice acting is strong in this scene, and honestly has been throughout the game. Jerry Ann Monroe plays Lynch, and Brian Bloom plays Kane. I feel like without their talents throughout this game, it would have been a real slog. You can tell that the voice actors are giving it their all. And not just the main two characters either. Jason Connery does a great job as Glazer, and all the other supporting casts put in their best efforts as well. Speaking of putting our best effort forward, Kane and Lynch escape this horrendous scene completely naked and torn up. They fight through more bad guys and eventually escape the city. They have a plan, but thankfully for all involved, they put some clothes on.
I can't wear this. Just put it on.
We head to Glazer, hoping that he hadn't heard of anything that had been going on up until this point. It's not a good plan, but they're drawing at straws here. Of course, Glazer had heard, and orders his men to kill Kane and Lynch. The duo manages to kill their own gang, and as they confront Glazer, he is killed by a sniper in the distance.
Look, I'll tell Shangsy today. You can leave the country. Wait, hear him out. I got a plane. What the hell?
The two come to the realization that this entire scenario was brought on by Shangsy to trap them. Though the pair attempt to fight through everything and escape, they eventually get captured while trying to leave from a train station. Now, this train station is probably one of my favorite set pieces in the game. I've mentioned before that the entire game essentially boils down to cutscene, fight scene, repeat, with there being load screens in the middle just to give us new set pieces. The train station is not only big, but the different train cars give for a nice dynamic. Enemies can be in and around everywhere, but so can the players. It's a much needed change as much of the rest of the game, even when there are bigger areas to explore, just kind of feel like hallways we have to run down. And sometimes that is literally the case, but the train station gives just a little bit of freedom. Now, unfortunately, it's not much to look at, but neither is the rest of the game. Kane and Lynch 2 is not a particularly good-looking game, and I don't think it was at the time of release either. There can be some good lighting at times, but everything just comes off as bland. I'm sure this was done intentionally to add to the realism and to make things feel more gritty, but gritty doesn't have to be boring. I think the character models are what stick out the worst though. The main duo just look off, and so do the enemies, especially the dogs. And in general, again, it just feels like it needs more polish, but enough about that. We have a turret section to talk about. After the duo gets captured, we end up on a helicopter, which we promptly take over. This begins an extended turret section, because it wouldn't be an Xbox 360 era action game without a turret section. And as far as turret sections go, this one is pretty good. I like that we're in the air, it makes it feel more fun. The actual combat that happens in sections like these is never particularly great, but what can you do? I do find it funny that as this section continues, we are literally going past pane windows, so it really does start to feel like a shooting gallery. Almost like a light gun game or something. Eventually, we crash land and start to make our journey towards the last few scenes of the game. Yes, you heard me correctly. We are already near the end of the game. One of the best things I can say about Dog Days is, for whatever it's worth, the game does not overstay its welcome. A lot of issues I've been talking about with the non-strategy, the repetitive enemies, the shaky camera would be so much worse if this was a 20-hour game, but no. You can get in and out of this one in under 3 hours. As far as I know, the game launched at full price, and to only get 3 hours from a story mode is honestly abhorrent. I've always been a huge defender of the game The Order 1886, and I remember people were going crazy that that game was only around 5 hours. This is on top of the fact that Kane and Lynch 2 has no real replayability. Why would anyone ever purposefully choose to go back and play through the campaign again? Once you beat the game, it's not like you unlock New Game Plus or any additional bonus content. The game is just over. There isn't even any token unlockables you can earn in the story mode. No concept art, no OST, jukebox, nothing. The only options after that are the arcade mode and the online multiplayer, which I will get into after we wrap up this story. We make our way through the building, of course getting rid of anyone in our way with the hopes of making it to Shangsy. This is where the one and only boss fight of the game takes place, and unfortunately, much like the rest of the game, it's not great. As you make your way through this office building, we are attacked by a helicopter that shoots intermittently. So, essentially the entire fight devolves into take cover while the copter is shooting, and then when it decides to stop, shoot at it, and repeat till it's dead and gone. If this sounds familiar, that's cause that is what this entire game technically is. Just this time it's a helicopter instead of a foot soldier. This is one of those situations where I feel like Dog Days is going for a more realistic feel, I guess, heard it? But why does every single enemy in the game act the exact same? Why wouldn't we get some enemies with a riot shield or a master sniper where you'd have to time when to move? Anything to break up all the monotony of this. The helicopter boss fight is almost a perfect encapsulation of everything wrong with Dog Days. It's cool in theory, and it can even look fun, but in practice it just isn't that much fun. I digress. Let's finish this. Kane and Lynch eventually make it to Shaanxi, and in a bit of a twist, Shaanxi is impressed with how hard they fought to get him, and offer the duo a job.
Shit. Come on, boys. Let's be civilized. You gotta be fucking kidding. Hear him out. Your eyes move, Mr. Kane. I can use a man like you. Therefore, I make this offer. Listen. Mr. Lynch. Shit, Lynch! What was that? What the fuck was that? Fucking believe it! Fuck!
Well, damn. No way anyone could have seen that coming. The guy who has been killing everyone in a plot of revenge killed the guy who killed his girlfriend? Crazy. In case you couldn't tell, that was sarcasm. We're now at the final set piece of the game, an airport. Kane and Lynch, being left with no other options, have a plan to steal one of Glazer's planes and get out of Dodge. For whatever reason, the game decides to switch who we're playing as at this point, and for the first time in the game, we play as Kane instead of Lynch. Now, there's no real difference between the two. It's not like Kane has some hidden abilities. I feel like the devs just wanted to switch things up just because. In this section, Dog Days tries to force a stealth section, but there was just no way I was going to deal with all that, so I just took a guy and started blasting. We get to where Glazer is housing a plane, and of course things don't work out because nothing ever does in this game, so the duo decides the best course of action is to steal a commercial jet. Dog Days at this point tries to set up a big memorable sequence where we have to run towards a plane before it's too late. It's a cool sequence in theory, but it exposed probably the biggest problem that we've been dealing with this whole game. This godforsaken camera. As I'm running towards the plane, the camera is shaking, bobbing, and weaving. As I mentioned earlier, Dog Days was trying something different with the camera in this one, and tried to emulate a found footage style camera within its third-person action setting. The problem with that, though, is at all times, that means when you run, the game has to pretend that there is a cameraman following you throughout all of the action. While running towards the plane in this ending scene, I genuinely got a bit nauseous. Now, to be fair, maybe that's because at this point I had been playing this game for a couple hours, but a game shouldn't make you feel seasick for just playing the game. This idea behind the camera is a really cool one and could have been a real selling point for the game, but in the end, it really is just one of those more standout detractors behind Dog Days. Speaking of, it's time to put this campaign behind us. The duo hijacks a plane and flees to Ecuador, and then the game just ends. There are a lot of loose ends here, and the developers definitely left room for there to be a third game, and for a while, that was the plan. The third game was cancelled at some point due to middling reviews, so the campaign is done. We roll credits, and then what? Well, I said earlier that there is an arcade mode, which is essentially just an offline Payday clone, but worse. Go in, steal some things, and then try to leave. Whoever has the most money at the end wins. That's literally the entire arcade mode, and there is no reason for you to go back and play this by yourself. Then there's online multiplayer, but good luck ever finding anyone to play this with you. I'm sure at one point it would have been easy to find a match, but in 2025, no one is playing this online. No one is playing this in general, except me. So, to answer the question from the beginning of this video, is Kane and Lynch 2 Dog Days any good? Well, unfortunately the answer is not really. The game has a lot of promise, and there are times within it where it can be a bit of mindless fun. However, there was just so much bogging it down. Repetitive gameplay, weird difficulty spikes, bad controls, among other issues. The developers tried really hard to do something unique here within a very oversaturated genre, and told a pretty good little gritty story along the way, but overall, I'd probably give this one a pass. If you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching. I put a lot of work into this video, so please consider subscribing for more content, and hopefully more long-form content. This has been Andrew with UberCred, and I will see you next time.